Well, thank you everybody for joining the presentation. My name is Dominic Tolero, and as Joe said, I've been around for a long time. Every time I read that bio, I feel a little bit older, but it's an exciting environment to be in, and there's so many changes that are taking place that it just always adds new approaches, new visions, new capabilities as we move forward in that area. So what I'm going to do is we're going to start with telling you just a little bit about Sonata. And basically, we've been in business for over 30 years, and we're over a $400 million company. Our solution portfolio spreads across digital with omni-channel, mobility, and IoT and so forth, application lifecycle solutions, platform IP, which is extremely important because we wrote some of our own IP to extend the capabilities of the ERP system that we work with into areas such as lean distribution, lean manufacturing, and you'll see a slide at the end of my presentation that basically shows supply chain, a true supply chain, and the complexity and all the areas that you can think as you look at it, where you could actually start, managing the business differently. We've been a Microsoft partner for over 25 years. We have 12 gold certified competencies. We have a team of over 1,000 on Microsoft technologies with 500 over on Dynamics. And, we have offices across Europe, the US, and of course our headquarters in India. This talks about some of what I just talked about. The difference I wanted to bring up over here is that we have an extended footprint with the Microsoft stack services with Cortana, Azure in the cloud, the infrastructure and so forth. Our industry expertise, as I said, retail, CPG, distribution with our own IP as well. A global footprint for joint GTM and client solutions across US, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and so forth. And, we will continue investing in Microsoft because that's what we see as the future for us. So Sonata's vision is basically to be a partner that executes on digital transformation, utilizing the power of Microsoft enterprise technology platforms, as well as our IP on a stack, the Microsoft stack preferably, and proprietary digital transformation. So basically, we're looking at platformation. So let's talk a little bit about general concepts. Lean is not a destination. Lean really is a process. And if you think back, Lean is not new. It never had the name Lean at the beginning, but it's not new because it started back in the 30s with Henry Ford, where he was trying to speed through production and manufacture without creating waste. Then in the 50s, in Japan, they were recovering from World War II. They didn't have materials. They weren't very rich. So they had to find ways of making things happen and building their economy by removing waste and only dealing with value, okay? In the 70s, the results of that was that Toyota came out with their production system, which was JIT, Kanbans, and so forth and so on. Now, this is still evolving, so it's not like it's over. There's world-class practices that are from USA, Germany, and Japan. And as we said, and as Joe kept saying, the main purpose is to eliminate all non-value-added activities. That sounds simple, but it's not as simple as it sounds, okay? There's 5 principles that you have to deal with, and you're looking at identifying the value, understanding the value streams, creating the flow, introducing pull, and strive for perfection. The thing you have to remember is that your business is not set up to do that initially. So you're going to have to sit down, and everything is going to have to be open to interpretation and to change. And if you want to be successful, my experience has been that these projects, a lot of projects are usually driven bottom up. These projects have to be driven top down because the executives, ownership, if you're a private company, if you're a public company, they have to understand that you have to change the way you do things. You have to understand what's happening in the market, and you have to take advantage of that in order to be more profitable and in order to add value to your customers, because that's what it's all about. You add value to your customers, you're adding value to yourself, and of course, you're affecting your margin. So that's all good. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go into the software package that we use, which is Dynamics 365 for operations from Microsoft. So it's a new package. It's been around, well, new. It's been around a lot longer than new. It's about 15 years old, and but it's built on the Microsoft stack. It's in the cloud, and it's one of the best packages out there to start working with. What we're going to do is we're going to look at screens, so you can see how all of this is affected. Sorry. You're going to see that we're going to start creating our value streams, as Joe was talking about. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start identifying our value streams. Okay. So we're going to start identifying the processes that are going to be managed via Lean, the pull methodology. And in our solution, we identify them as operating units specific to an entity. So an operating unit to one entity may be managed one way, an operating unit to another entity may be managed a different way. That's not a problem. Our system allows you to manage things differently based on your capabilities and based on the capacity that you have in your company. Now, a lot of these terms that you're going to see sound like manufacturing terms, but Lean applies to administration, Lean applies to manufacturing, Lean applies to distribution, Lean applies to retail, Lean applies across your whole supply chain. One of the first projects I got involved in Lean had to do with administration, because they were losing a lot of opportunities because the customers felt that they were too hard to work with. There was too much for them to do. So they sat down and they started applying Lean principles to administration. Well, we continue building the value flows, the value streams, to our production flows, and we assign names and descriptions to the value streams. This assigns the costs to the correct streams and connects the operations to the individual production group, okay? So basically, it's a combination of products that are identified to specific groups, as well as grouping similar products to match to work in the call setup. So when you set it all up, what you've got now is you've got, in this example, we're basically looking at the cells and how the product is being built or assembled or distributed, depending on the various areas that you're going through, and part of the group that attaches itself to it. Now, this is the actual ERP package. So when I talk about it, I'm not explaining how it's all set up, but at least you can see how the Lean is changing from having an MRP system, which works on batches and so forth, and is starting to look at these processes are going to be different. Okay, we're going to run them differently. The beauty of the package is that you can actually also run a mixed mode environment where you have both manufacturing in a discrete method and manufacturing in a Lean method. The same thing with distribution. You can have distribution that is discrete and distribution that's Lean. So the system allows you to do all of that. So on the next slide, what we're going to see here are the planning rules. Okay, and we talked a lot about Kanban. Well, obviously, one of the default order types is Kanban, and that becomes a coverage group for that mid-range speaker that you see listed up there. So in the product information section, you actually identify the default order type for the item, which allows you to create all the Kanbans that you need or that the system needs. This is where you apply the specific rules and Kanban operating rules, which dictate the behavior that these items are going to take, and looks to apply the specific pull rules that are going to come into play. In the default coverage, okay, you also enter the minimum quantity for the Kanban. And the reason I say that is Joe brought up a good point earlier where he was saying, you know, you have to, you know, you set up, you've got to start analyzing the setup. Absolutely correct. Absolutely. And if you've got CNC machines and so forth, it could be one item that you're going to make. But if you got press punches, and it takes you 6 hours to do a change up, you got to reconsider that. You're not going to make one. So you got to sit down and you got to start looking at it. But you've got to consider minimums. In other words, if you were making 1,000 of something, address that setup and strip down and so forth, so that now maybe you can make 100. Okay, if you apply certain rules and capabilities and make some changes in the way you do things. Maybe keep some items on the side already set up so that when it comes time to make the change on that press, it's going to be a lot faster. you know, there's ways of doing that. We had to come up with some creative ways. I'm sure you will as well, because everybody has a creative bone in their body, so it's important. Then what you're looking at is the Kanban rules. At this point, the actual Kanban card is created, and it contains all the rules relating to its behavior. So the source requirements will always be a fixed Kanban. Obviously, you don't want the Kanban to go up and down and up and down and up and down. It's going to be fixed. And if you need two Kanbans to complete what you need, then therefore you have two Kanban cards that are going to be set up. We allow Kanbans to be triggered. We allow parent Kanbans, sorry, to trigger children Kanbans based on a structure that you may have in the system. And that is usually a bill of materials system, so that you know that when the parent is being pulled, the Kanban will have to be pulled next on the child, so that you can start, you know, you can keep the flow going properly. Now, the beauty of that is it also allows, like I said, mixed mode. So you can have items that are not Kanban driven, and you can add items that are. And the system allows you to identify those, and you can see there's source replenishments, there's the Kanban card number, there's the parent Kanban that would be listed down there if there was one. You can see that it's a source requirement, this replenishment strategy is fixed. So you have all this information at your fingertips that you start using. And the beauty of this is that this applies to distribution as well, because there's a flow to distribution. There's a pull in distribution. And if you do it properly, you have lean capabilities that are taking advantage of distribution. I don't know if any of you remember, but about 20, 25 years ago, there was a theory that started being, applied, and they were called Gordon Graham principles. And basically what he was doing is, short of setting up Kanbans and so forth, because he wasn't at that point, he was starting the pull application for distribution. In other words, forget safety stock, forget minimums, forget this, forget that. Just pull what you need through from your vendor all the way through to your customer. Now, there were other issues that we'll talk about later, such collaboration and the technology and so forth. But he had the idea, and it was being done manually. This was about 25, 30 years ago. Gordon Graham principles, if anybody's interested in reading it. What you're looking at here is an actual screen in the system based on the requirements calculated with the Kanban rules that are entered in the product setup planning rules. So the system basically creates the Kanban cards for the items required. And you can see the card numbers, so you can go after them. You can see who's going to be handling it as well. So this provides you with a list of all the items for which you have Kanbans created and waited to be executed on. So now you've got a screen where you can start looking at the flow. This is how things are going to start moving across, and you'll see from a few more slides now that there'll actually be times assigned to it and so forth and so on. So if we go to the next one, you'll see here that we have the Kanban board for processing jobs. This is basically the equivalent of a visual card board. So if you're familiar with the visual card boards, you're going to have a board up, and it's going to have different colored cards in there. And as soon as one gets pulled, then another one has to be put in there. So this is basically the same thing. And this also allows you to work in conjunction. We've got firms where they actually like to have the card because their people on the floor feel comfortable with the card, but their managers and their supervisors like to have the board so they can match the two of them together and always make sure that things are working together and there's nothing is happening here that's being forgotten, missed, or confusing what's going on the shop floor. Okay, so this is, it allows you to combine the screen. I keep bringing that up because it's important to understand that. You can see both here, and this is an option that can be skipped. You know, if you don't want the manual part, you just use this. So it's a visual screen that can be provided on the shop floor for visibility and workstation update. And we've got companies that actually have these huge screens that they've put all over their shop floor in order to get this information across to everybody. Then what we've got is a transfer board, okay, for basically Kanban schedule. And what you're looking at here is it's transferring to supermarkets. So basically a supermarket is the equivalent of a staging location. So everybody knows what a staging location is. You've got those for distribution where, you know, things are sitting there waiting to be packaged. You've got those in manufacturing where things are waiting to go to the next level, and so forth. This is a screen that's usually used by the material management folks because they use the screen in order to move products around and get them to the right place at the right time. Okay. The Kanban board for work schedules. This is basically an individual work cell work list. Okay, so what you're looking at here is what an operator would be looking at, is what whoever's moving the inventory and needs to do the packaging, for instance, now is looking at. Whoever is building that pallet is looking at if that's going to be a task that you're going to set up accordingly. So this is an individual work cell work list showing the specific job that needs to be done. You could pick a cell and have a visual of all the work waiting to be processed in that cell. So as you can see here, you've got the work cell over there, you've got the view from date, you can set up the periods, in this case 5, the activities that are taking place, the card numbers, the Kanbans, the times, and what it is that you're working on. So all of that is updated inside the system. Now, if you look at a typical MRP system, ERP system that just has MRP, you won't find this. If you're looking at an ERP system that supports both discrete and lean, both in a manufacturing distribution environment, then these are the type of screens you should be looking at, because these are the type of screens that are going to allow you to actually start setting up the proper value streams, the proper flows, everything that you need in order to become lean. Okay, so what we've looked at here is the various screens that actually exist in the system, so that you can see that there's tools inside a system in order to help you apply a theory. Because it's one thing to apply a theory, it's another thing to have the tools to help you do it with. The next slide, basically, you know, it shows a value chain. Okay, and I picked CPG because you can see it goes from the raw material supplier to the subcontractor, if you have one. In a lot of cases there are. You can look at the production sites, you can look at the distribution, you can look at the retail, you can look at the consumer, you see the arrows that go back and forth, you see regulatory compliance. So I look at this, and every one of these I look at, I see lean opportunities. Because I guarantee you, I'm not doing it in the most lean manner possible if I sat down and started looking at it. And why is that? It's because this is stuff that I've been doing for a while, and I've potentially been using a system that wouldn't help me with it, and I just grew into it. And because I grew into it, that's what I do. And one of the questions I always ask when I sit down with a prospect, when I sit down with somebody who's implementing, is why? Until I get to the right answer, just keep asking why. Because everywhere here that you look at on this, you'll see that there's a way to apply lean concepts and bring value to the customer by reducing non-value add processes. Okay. Here, what you're seeing here is basically the whole concept, which is lean and ERP need to support pull. Okay, it's that simple. From sales order entry, which is to build the order Kanbans and direct the scheduling, to level loading, which is Kanban scheduling, Heijunka boards, to incorporate mixed mode manufacturing. ERP needs to support lean, and they need to work together, because they can't, one can't take over from the other one. They have to work together in order for you to achieve the areas that you want to be in and where you want to gain value. Well, some of the advantages you're going to be looking at is fewer keystrokes. If you apply lean, one of the things you're looking at when you're entering an order, why am I pressing these keys 15 times? Why can't I do it 3? Okay? And a lot of times if you sit down and start asking that, you realize that actually maybe I can. And I can if I do this, this, and this. And if I have a system that allows me to potentially realign my screen in such a way that I only have to press 3 keys, that's extremely important. Again, back to lean and ERP. Auto creation of Kanbans, have a system that allows you to do that. Auto screen refresh, have a system that allows you to do that so you don't have to press keys all the time. Okay, lower inventory costs with automatic recalculation of Kanban quantities. Use Kanban's links to max or safety stock to make to order replenishment. So once you've got that Kanban set up, really what you're looking at is a min. Okay, because you're not going to be doing less than that. So you got to make sure that your max, you're careful with your max, because then you're right back to min-max, and that's somewhere you want to be concerned of. Now, expansion of lean concepts in the value chain. Okay, phase one started with manufacturing. It was in the 50s and then in the 60s, and it started with car engines, believe it or not. That's what was the first application for lean, and then it moved on to car assemblies and so forth. Then in phase two, they started looking at their suppliers. And, you know, one of the major things there was they started using EDI, and Ford really wanted to use EDI to play with their vendors' master production schedule. Yeah, that didn't work out too well. So they started using EDI for other stuff. So that was in the 1970s. In phase three, which started in the 80s, again, Gordon Graham and so forth, that's when distribution systems and customer started coming into the lean side of things, okay? So how do I manage my customer? The paperwork that the customer has to create to do business with me, the paperwork I create to do business with the customer. How do I manage my distribution? The paperwork that's required in the shop floor when I want something to be picked up, something to be packaged, my minimum, my maximums, and so forth and so on. That's when that started hitting there, and that's what I said. That's when Gordon Graham, you know, started with his book and started making things happen. Lean distribution principles, you know, completely meet demand, deliver at promised times, and fulfill at minimal cost. That's part of lean distribution. Okay, the benefits, as I said, you're going to have less inventory, you're going to have more revenue, margin, increased customer satisfaction, shorter delivery lead times, and very important in the distribution world is shorter model changeovers. So if you're coming into phase outs and phase ins of products, if you have a lot of inventory, well, you know, your vendor, the manufacturer may say, I don't care how much you've got. This is now hitting the market in 2 weeks, and you're stuck with 3 months worth of inventory. Well, that becomes a big fire sale, if it's still possible, because sometimes you can't do that, or it becomes a write-off. So you've got to look at ways to anticipate these possibilities. Okay? Technology advancement in lean distribution. I'll tell you right now, if it wasn't for collaboration that technology brought about, then there would be a problem with lean, because you got to manage your workforce across the supply chain. Okay, well, think about it: mobility, tablets, you know, all emails, all that kind of stuff. That now is, you know, we just think about it. Yeah, it's doable. Whatever. Now you can actually set workflows for people that are traveling somewhere, so they can give you an approval within. You click the button, they get it. They click the button, yes or no, it's approved. Go forward. Omni-channel fulfillments. Again, if it wasn't for technology, you wouldn't have B2B, B2C, and so forth and so on. Supply chain management systems, where you're using electronic data interface and so forth. Trading partner interfaces, you know, where you've got, you know, Ariba, for instance, and so forth. All of those, but also where you've got actual in the system itself, in the ERP system, you've got portals. So your partners can go in there, your customers can go in there, they can see what's happening, they don't have to call you. That is value, and that's non-value add if you had to do it. It's value add if they can just go in there, click, and they've got the information. Makes a big difference. Customer order management, customer relationship management. That's become a big buzzword in making sure that you're helping your customers. So, you know, if it wasn't for technology, this would not be something. So lean would still happen, because lean is a process, but how far-reaching would it be, and would it be something that you could use across your supply chain? That becomes questionable. Okay, so what we've got here, as I was saying, is we start off our modern distribution for lean starts with advanced supply chain analytics, because you need to be analyzing what is going on. You've got your B2B e-commerce, which we've got a solution for that. You've got enterprise mobile platform, which we've got a solution. And you got the mobile van and route to market application, which we have a solution. All of that sitting on top of what we also call more of our IP, advanced supply chain, which has advanced revenue management, inventory management, order management, procurement management, all sitting on top of a great ERP system Microsoft Dynamics 365, which has the full ERP suite with manufacturing, finance, inventory management, warehouse management, transportation management. So we've got the full solution there that's available to anybody that wants to use, that is looking to go lean and wants to have an ERP system that will actually support the lean approach that they want to put into play. That's the end of my presentation.